It's time to start the 25th hour, and today we've got time on our minds. I'm Nadia Nikpour-Badr.
And I'm Reagan Spencer. Keeping on theme, we'll explore stories that look backwards, look forwards, and appreciate the moment we're in now.
From exploring the heritage of a bridge that might soon be demolished, to building a future for birds in our ecosystem, and capturing the beauty of decay on camera, we'll bring you all of this and more on the 25th hour.
Isabelle and Mary Lynn have been carving ice sculptures for 10 years. This past winter, their skills were on display at Ottawa's Winterlude Festival. For them, ice sculpting is more than a job. It's a way of life.
The meaning of ice sculpture is more than meets the eye. Isabelle and Mary Lynn have designed this piece to pay tribute to Métis culture.
When I was younger, I was in art school, and my teacher brought me to do a snow carving contest, and then I won the first prize, and then I started just to do it every year.
I learned to carve with life. Some people go to school, I did not. So yeah, now School of Life teach me how to carve.
I met Marilyn at the Ice Hostel of Quebec. We started at the same year actually, and we didn't knew each other, and we had always to do the same project because like we were new and we were the two girls, so they were saying like, oh, let's bring the two girls doing that part of the project. So that's how we started to work together.
My name is Marilyn Gagné, originally from Quebec, now in BC, and I'm a professional ice carver.
I'm Isabelle Gass, I'm from Montreal, and I'm an ice carver and snow carver. Marilyn and I are really different. We are working differently, and we have different skills, but it's kind of merged really good together. I'm good at designing and having concept, and she's really good at doing things real, like finding the shape of an animal or an object. So, and also she's really fast. I'm kind of more slow, but sometimes I take a feedback and I'm more looking at, okay, we need to do that because it's not, the whole thing is not nice enough. So I think we are merging those two strengths, and it's doing like a really awesome team.
Me and Isabelle, we've been carving for the past 10 years. We met each other in the Ice Hostel, and we started carving, and we learned both how to carve at the same time. So we learned together how to work as a teamwork also, and let go a little bit of your ego so you're able to join and make a piece that both have fun and put their best in it. Yeah, it's very fun to carve with Isabelle. Good time. For preparing a piece like that, it's actually need a little bit of time with your partner to figure it out how, not the piece, how to carve it, but how to stack the ice together, which is the toughest part because we have a certain amount of block of ice and we have to know how to stack them to make the piece, use them the maximum.
We did some research, me and Marilyn, and we found that there was some symbols really strong in the Métis culture, like the sash and the violin. Also, the bison was a figure that was coming back often, and the kind of flower pattern that women are sewing, and the kind of infinite like sign that is them flag actually. So we merged all those symbols. The thing that is complicated with ice is that it's transparent. So if you're carving behind, you're gonna see the line in front. So you cannot, you have to always think about what you're carving and where you're doing your line. And it's kind of difficult to be able to make things understandable.
It's always a quest to reach the perfection, and I think the day that I will reach the perfection is the day I'm gonna stop carving. At first I did not know this medium of art existed, and when I've witnessed some other carver come in the Ice Hostel of Quebec and start carving, and then I was witnessing that beautiful stuff they were making, it's like been a snowstorm in my spine. I have to do it, otherwise my life will be meaningless.
If you attach too much about like keeping the object or preserving it, it became something else. For us, it's only the act of making something emerge from the material and to act for people, so we know that people are coming to see it, and it's like ephemeral, and it's going to be like only that time, like a lot of moments in life actually. We have to live the present moment, and we are creating present moment. We are carving present moment.
We're done!
We did it!
Yeah!
Woo!
Wow, those ice sculptures were pretty gorgeous, weren't they?
They are, and they highlight the fleeting nature of some art, just like our next story.
Dying flowers may not be what many people find beautiful, but for photographer Kelly McDonald, there's beauty in that decay.
She works with botanicals in all their withered glory to create art. Kelly appreciates the passage of time and everything that brings, both bright and hard. She was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2021. Her latest series is called Relics. She explores the changes in her body and mind through photographing botanicals at different stages of their life cycle.
Before I shoot, before I press that shutter, I have to make sure I'm in a very contemplative state. I need to have music. I need to spend time with my higher being, my God, because that's where the magic comes from. I need to be out of myself and connecting with the spirituality to bring forth the work. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in the spring of 2021, just before starting school. I remember orientation day going to the teacher and saying, I don't think I should be part of this program because I was just diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And he said, no, it's going to be part of your journey. It's going to really help your photography. So I decided to go ahead with it. Relics are pieces that I found in nature, that nature has shown me. They're usually pieces that have been withered, plant materials, and things that are things that people don't see, that just step over and just don't look at them. And when I brought them into the studio, I started feeling that they were the relics were pieces of me that were starting to die away. I can make something beautiful out of something that looks forgotten or dead. And I try to find the beauty in things that have died away. It's my way of accepting my disease and saying, hey, I live with this disease, but there's still beauty in me somewhere, and honoring that beauty. Hi, Mingus. Hi. Hi, buddy. Hi, Jelly. Hi, Mingus. Hi, boys. Come here. Come here. Hi. Hi, Jelly. My dogs are amazing. My dogs bring softness to my life, and sometimes I forget I have Parkinson's when I'm with them as well. They're so non-judgmental, and if I'm having a really hard day sometimes, if I'm tremoring too much, he'll come on the bed and lie on my feet, and they're so in the moment as well. It reminds me just to be in the moment. The number one symptom is fatigue. I get tired very quickly, so I can't last the full day. I don't get up until I'm sure I'm ready to go. It's all about planning my day, because I know in the afternoon I'm not gonna be as energetic. I know if I'm out, I'm gonna start to fade. My new projects, I find I'm gravitating more back to the color. I find it's time to be hopeful again. time to be soft again, not so rigid. And I like the look of the color on the Japanese washi paper as well. It gives it that sort of antique-y look, and maybe it's because spring is coming, I don't know. Photographing color is going back more to the outlook of being more accepting, not being so sad about it, not always reflecting on my death. Come hell or high water, I'll always shoot. And even if it gets to be blurry, my project will take on a new life. And I'll do a set of blurry photos if I have to. I can't survive without shooting. It's my way of expression.
McDonald recently won Ottawa's Best Photography Account in the 2025 Faces of Ottawa Awards. Another Ottawan who finds joy in plants is Jennifer Dowd, the curator of the botany collection at the Canadian Museum of Nature. Ottawa is known for its many museums. While these museums are interesting to visit, there is far more research going on behind the scenes than most people realize.
Dowd handles over 1 million plants, algae, and lichen samples. Her love for plants has motivated her research and archive work. Dowd is on a mission to connect people with Canada's diverse plant life.
So this is peat moss, and it's showing how the vast majority of a peat moss is empty space. I'm Jennifer Dowd. I'm curator of botany here at the Canadian Museum of Nature. I've been working at the museum for 19 years soon. My focal plants are mosses and liverworts, so very tiny plants that are ubiquitous. They grow in the city, on sidewalks and on cement walls. They grow in, pristine waterfalls and northern tundra. They're everywhere. And a lot of us don't notice them, but as soon as you do start noticing them, you realize that they're everywhere all around. Well, in terms of the specimens themselves, the actual objects that represent botany and mineralogy and paleobiology and zoology, it's a fraction of 1% that are ever on display downtown. We can display our most beautiful maple sample downtown. But in the herbarium, there's a cabinet that contains 2,000 maple specimens. And for people who want to compare what maples look like in the north or the south or the east or the west of Canada, or how their flowering times are changing through the years, then this is the resource that they want to see. So, the herbarium is a living collection, and by that I don't mean that the plants are growing, but I mean that it's like a living document in a way, a living archive where we're always adding knowledge and resources to it so that it's always current and relevant today, and planning to make it current and relevant in the future. It is a public collection, and if people want to visit, if they have a question that could be answered by this kind of archive, it's just a matter of setting up an appointment to come and see it. But by putting it on the internet, it makes all of those cabinets, searchable and accessible on the internet anywhere at any time. So it's a really big job, but a big preoccupation of ours to get that information out where it can be accessed so much more easily. I've made a ton of mistakes as I went through my career path, and so I like to cheer people on in all of the good work that they're doing. When I was growing up, my parents, my dad especially, took us on lots of hikes and showed us lots of things, my sister and I. And speaking for myself, I sometimes thought that was boring. I sometimes resisted. But invariably, when we came home, it had been a really good day, and we had good stories to tell. So it was a roundabout route to start working in botany. I thought when I went to university that I was going to be a chemist. But during that time, I took an ecology class where we went out on field trips every week. And it just blew my mind that people could be paid to go outside and discover new things about nature. At the same time, I had left a small town, Deep River, Ontario, where I grew up, to go to the city and start my university studies. And I didn't realize till I left how much I missed those natural surroundings. As I continued my studies, I started to see that home landscape in new ways and new, I guess, friends, that I'd known all my life. I started to know what their names might be in Latin and get to know them in a different way.
What does this one say? So this one says varnish, but this one says no.
I do feel strongly that we're all on this one planet, and we don't have another one like it. So recognizing what we have, taking the opportunity to, take a close look from many different perspectives to see what is here while it's still here, and recognize that it's finite and that there are ways that we can act that will impact them for better or worse is really, really at the foundation of my passion for the herbarium and the resource that it represents. Here's a nice one, and it's old too.
Yeah, that's good. 76, oldest one so far.
Billions of wild birds have disappeared from Canadian skies over the past 40 years. This year alone, roughly 250,000 birds in Ottawa were found dead. Birds play an important role in the ecosystem, from pollinating plants to dispersing seeds to keeping bugs at bay. But what would our environment look like without them?
Imagine a world without birds. The quiet may be nice for a second, maybe two, but soon enough you'd know that something was missing. 3 billion birds have disappeared from our skies since the 1970s. In a world without birds, what do we stand to lose? I met with Rosalind Dinkin, a biologist who studies flight behavior, to learn more about the role of birds in our ecosystem and what our environment would look like if they left.
So birds are really important to us at a functional level. We have about 500 species of birds here in Ontario, and many of them rely on insects. And there are a lot of insects that are pests. There are mosquitoes that are problematic for us to enjoy outdoors in the summer, but that also carry important diseases. There are diseases that are spread, from the tropics, that are spreading further north with climate change, that are carried by mosquitoes and ticks. Well, what are the predators of those insects? Birds.
So in other words, without birds, bugs can thrive and spread diseases all across Canada. The climate crisis adds another layer to this, as it hurts birds and helps bugs, which thrive in warmer climates. We spoke to Alessandra Kite, a bird expert who's been banding birds for the past 10 years.
A lot of the birds that are declining or that are facing the most severe declines are grassland birds and aerial insectivores.
Aerial insectivores are birds that hunt for bugs while they're flying in the air. Typically considered pests, grassland birds and aerial insectivores depend on these bugs for food.
They're the species that kind of regulate insect population, right? But we are killing all of the insects with our insecticides, or pesticides all across our agricultural land, which is a majority of our land in Canada, apart from boreal forest, which they're also logging. So they can't catch a break, honestly.
Birds have it rough. There's little to eat and fewer places to live. But how do researchers keep track of our feathered friends? One method? Bird banding. Bird banding is a practice of catching wild birds in nets, marking them with an ID bracelet, gathering data, and letting them go again. The whole process takes less than an hour. Bird banding can help estimate population size, figure out their diet, estimate lifespans, even track their migrational patterns.
Banding is the sole reason we've been able to figure out how long wild birds can live. The band is simply just an identifying feature, and it just makes sure that you're not getting repeat data from the same individual.
And this data is important considering that so many birds end up dead on their migration back up north due to window collisions. I spoke to Jamie Muse, who volunteers with a local bird welfare organization, to learn more.
Birds just don't know what glass is. Like, glass is just not something that they can grasp or understand. It's not like a natural feature in their environment. So when they come across glass, they can't exactly tell what it is or that it's a solid thing. If you take anything out of an ecosystem, the whole thing is affected. If nothing changes, they will decline and probably become extinct.
The situation is tough, but don't get too crestfallen. There's still hope for birds, but it's up to us to make bird-friendly choices. Choices like putting decals and stickers on your windows, making them visible to birds, planting a wide variety of native plants in your garden that birds can eat, or better yet, keeping your cats inside. We need to take care of our natural world if we want to enjoy it any longer. If not, Decay predicts this possible future.
If you imagine going out in a forest that is silent, where a forest in the spring where you don't hear birds calling and you just hear like mosquitoes, that's a really horrific idea, right? So there's a real mental health benefit to being in nature, and birds are a real part of that. They're probably the most observable part of the animal kingdom that bring a lot of joy to people.
Nadia, Nikpour-Badr, 25th Hour. As a gay man in the 1980s, Gordon Asmus lived through the rise of the HIV pandemic that swept across Canada and the world. Following his diagnosis in 1993, Gord devoted his life to supporting those affected by HIV in Canada. Through his work with the AIDS community of Ottawa, Gord and other activists created a safe space for others to feel that community and acceptance.
Because of this work, the Canadian government was the first country to adopt a framework to end the global HIV epidemic. As these memories fade, it is important that the stories of those who fought are not forgotten. Claire Hutchins spoke with Gord about his work as an HIV/AIDS activist. She joins us now. Hi, Claire. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, were there any moments in your interview with Gord that really stood out to you?
I mean, the entire interview was just such an amazing experience, but what stood out the most for me when I was leaving the interview was how positive Gord was the entire time we were talking to him. He's just such a bright, bubbly, happy person that no matter what he's talking about, even if it's the worst thing that ever happened to him in his life, he always has a smile on his face and he wants you to feel comfortable and welcomed. And he has this beautiful, booming laugh and bright smile that just will always stay with me.
Seems like a very special person.
He is.
And Claire, why do you think it's important for Gord to keep sharing his stories and this history today?
I think for Gord, what he's most worried about is what happens when the people who did all of this work, all of his friends, the community, what happens when they pass on? As the memory is already fading from our public memory, when they then pass on, that memory, I think Gord is worried it will go with them. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the biggest things that Gord wants out of doing this with me is he wants people to realize that being able to forget that part of history is a privilege.
Thank you so much. Let's watch.
I mean, I don't have bad memories from those days, actually. Like, you know, back then too, AIDS was just starting to come into the picture, and so like I don't even think we knew what was hitting us at that point. Really, that is what it was. We didn't know what was about to happen. The first mention of it, was in Calgary, so it had to be in 81, maybe? I remember somebody saying, "Oh, be careful with you going down there." Or no, he said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to this convention. There'll be 2,000 gay men in that room. I'm going to have such a good time." And somebody said, "And just be careful of the gay cancer." The gay cancer was what I remember that specifically. It wasn't even called AIDS, or back then, I don't even think it had a name because it really didn't come into being until 84, but this was pre-84. Well, I didn't get diagnosed until 93, although I do believe I seroconverted probably around 81, 82, right around that same early time. But my first partner, when he was diagnosed, is when I finally had, okay, it's time. We were told back then, like, if you got AIDS, you were dying, right? Because there was, basically, I mean, some people survived. Well, I did, but a lot of people didn't. So, like, you couldn't, if you had if you had started investing money to look at, well, why would you? Like, you don't have a future. So you took that money and spent it. You couldn't get life insurance. People cashed in their life insurance because, like, why? That's why so many of people at my age don't have any security as we're becoming seniors. Like, I can't retire. It never caused me any sort of depression, or I never thought negative. But I'm fortunate because I acknowledge that. To me, it was more, okay, how can I make this better, right? Like, even when I got finally tested positive, I was concerned about a partner who was much, basically on his deathbed at that moment. So that's why it didn't depress me. I can't answer that. Burying 2 husbands to this disease is, and how I can be that resilient, I have no idea what my secret is. Positive mental attitude, maybe? I have always been one to say, I can't take without giving. So when I started receiving services and getting things and getting benefits, of each support and benefits, I saw ways that I could give back, and so that just was a natural fit, and that's how it's happened. It just seems to have snowballed. Oh, well, my proudest moment is the work on U equals U and convincing the Canadian government to endorse the U equals U statement, which made Canada the first country in the world to do so. So that is probably my proudest achievement. The gay community was just starting to deal with the HIV pandemic. And we were gathering together to support each other going through trauma. We were going through trauma, quite honestly. And we gathered together to support each other. That has changed now, where it's more professionals that have taken over that. I still sometimes think the other way was better. There was more heart in it, I think, sometimes, and certainly more support, whereas I think support for people with HIV is really dwindling.
Do you think that kind of knowledge and history is kind of getting lost as the years go on?
I think it can get lost very easily. I don't think it's getting lost yet, but I think it can very easily. The people who began this movement in the 80s, many of them are gone now. And that history is slowly being erased. Not erased, but disappearing. Or the memories of it are disappearing. Or the experiences of the people who experienced it, those people are disappearing. And that, to me, is sad, because there was a lot of good work done over the years.
Homelessness looks different for many people, which can make getting a complete data set on it a challenge. Canada's point-in-time count is a national initiative designed to track homelessness by providing a one-night snapshot of individuals going without stable housing. Conducted annually, the count collects key data on demographics, causes of homelessness, and services needs.
Volunteers survey individuals in shelters and on the streets, offering critical insights for policymakers and service providers. The pit count helps identify trends and inform strategies to address homelessness across the country. But where's that information collected from, and how accurate is it?
Oftentimes, we think of homelessness as just being without a home. It might look like sleeping in a tent like this one on the Rideau River in Ottawa, or sleeping in a shelter like the Shepherds of Good Hope. But that's not always the case. The experience of homelessness differs greatly depending on the person, from where they sleep to the challenges they face.
Homelessness is this experience of being disconnected from so many of those different pieces of our lives. Having somebody stay in a house is, 20% of the work. The rest of the work is how can this person plug back in and connect to their community, to feel involved and engaged.
So homelessness is a widespread issue across Canada and the world, but it's hard to know the extent. Not only is there a disconnect in being homeless, there may also be a disconnect between how we collect data about homelessness and the reality. So how do we actually get the numbers? You may have heard of what's called a point-in-time count, or the pit count. It's used all across the world, but in Canada, it's a nationally coordinated effort. There are two main parts: enumeration, or the count, which is coming up with a number of homeless people in a given community. And then there's the survey, which is asking homeless people a standardized set of questions. Questions like, how old are you? Or how did you become homeless? Pit counts in Canada happen every 3 years. The last one happened in late 2024, where 87 communities from across the country participated. While no place is required to participate in the count, according to the OECD, federal funding for homeless initiatives is usually tied up in a place's participation. Since the pit count is nationally coordinated, there are a few core standards that every community has to follow. For example, the count has to be done on a single night in October or November. The pit count is a huge logistical undertaking, and there are many factors that contribute to its success. In Ottawa and in many other places, they take a community-centered approach.
It's a very collaborative effort. There's no way the city could have done it by themselves. The City of Ottawa has a lot of community partners. We had 141 locations and 75 different community agencies that participated in the point-in-time count. So we had a core team with individuals representing our veteran community, the judicial systems, youth, Aboriginal and Indigenous, as well as new immigrants to the city.
Outreach staff literally go out and tally the number of homeless people living unsheltered or those in encampments. They combine this with the data they already collect from transitional housing and shelters. The survey portion is done over a wider period. In Ottawa's 2024 count, it took place over 5 days. Participants were asked a set of 29 questions over 10 or so minutes. They were allowed to skip any question they wanted, and at the end, they got a $10 gift card. But how do we actually use all this data? It actually helps with a ton of different social services.
Every social service serving agency in the city is connected to these results one way or another. You've got everything from the food banks will know how many people are unsheltered, and in the shelter system, you'll have our community health and resource centers, even the hospitals. They're all driven by the number of individuals requiring supports and services.
When it comes to Ottawa specifically, the pit count shows us an over 13% increase in those experiencing homelessness from 2021 to 2024. That's more than 300 people. The survey shows us that there's been an uptick in homeless newcomers as well as racialized men from the ages of 25 to 49. Now that we know what numbers the count collects, we can take a closer look into what's missing.
It doesn't account for overall annual pictures. As it's called, the point-in-time count, it is just a snapshot. So what our count would show that night of October 23rd may be different 2 months later.
Since this snapshot is so brief, the term hidden homelessness is used to describe those who aren't touching the system. For example, someone couch surfing or staying in an abandoned building or even being trafficked are homeless in a way that the count just can't pick up on. The survey also doesn't ask any location-specific questions. This lack of geographic data is another way that communities lack a full picture of homelessness. In fact, studies show that rural homelessness is much harder to quantify using the pit count. There's also the social aspect of the count, where experts say the surveys themselves can be quite invasive, but there are some ways the count could be improved.
Because every time we ask a person questions about their personal life, they're often asked to reshare their trauma. Every intake is a new, moment where you're often explaining a traumatic story. And do we need to do that? And do we need to ask more and more intense questions? And I would say at times invasive. I really question that. And, I have colleagues who have lived experience of homelessness, and that's a big conversation that we're having.
So now that we've learned about what the pit count is, how we collect the data, what it's used for, and some of the gaps, we can take a step back and look at the bigger picture. It's great to have all this data on homelessness, but it's going to take more than just numbers and statistics to end it.
The thing I always say, it's cheaper to end it than to manage it. And that's something that we often don't factor into it, but it's just something people get stuck and they don't realize this is such a solvable thing, but we have to think about doing it at a system level and not just piecemeal getting somebody into housing. It's a bigger thing than that, but we can do it with that collective work together.
For over 120 years, the Alexandra Bridge has been a staple of the Ottawa skyline, connecting Ottawa and Gatineau. It is widely recognized as a bridge of national historic importance and an architectural marvel. However, the Canadian government has said that in 3 years, it's coming down.
Until then, groups like Heritage Ottawa are fighting to save the bridge, though they are running out of time.
When you walk, you have an impression of walking the cathedral, It's very inspiring to me.
The Alexandra Bridge has colored the Ottawa skyline for over 120 years. It first opened in 1901, and it was carrying pedestrians, electric streetcars, trains, and even horses and wagons. Now, over 100 years later, the bridge is still carrying pedestrians, but now it's carrying cars and cyclists as well. But the conversation around the bridge has changed. The government of Canada has said that very soon, they're going to demolish the bridge. The bridge means different things to different people. For some, it's just something they pass through on their daily commute. But for others, like Claude Royer, it's so much more. It's a historic marvel. Claude Royer is a retired engineer. He's been living in the National Capital Region for over 30 years. For him, this isn't just any old bridge. Rather, it's indicative of a major moment in Canadian engineering history.
That this is the first huge infrastructure that got mandated to a Canadian engineering firm. Without exaggerating, we could say that this kick-started the skills and the appeal of using Canadian engineering in large work. It's an important testimony to the Canadian identity and the skills of Canadian.
The Alexandra Bridge is one of the oldest bridges in Canada. It took 4 years to build before opening in 1901. It was originally known as the Interprovincial Bridge, but after a visit from the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall and York, it was renamed the Royal Alexandra Bridge.
The bridge is built with a technology that is contemporary to the Eiffel Tower building. So we have the same sort of beams that are built by trellis. What I call trellises is these X's, crosses that are riveted between two pieces of steel to make a larger, more solid beam. So this is a technique that was used on the Eiffel Tower that we find in steel structure of the time, and that's pretty unique.
The cantilever truss, the steel material, and the arch design are all aspects of what make this bridge, the Alexandra Bridge, unique. There are only a few other bridges like it in the entire country. Some examples are the Peace Bridge that connect Fort Erie and Buffalo, and the Routierville Bridge that is in Routierville, Quebec. Now, advocates are also saying that there are some other bridges, that's the High Level Bridge in Edmonton and the Quebec Bridge, that should serve as a blueprint for how to go about repairing bridges like these. Both bridges have been repaired so their life can be extended up until 2100. That's a 75-year extension. These photos are just a small glimpse of the corrosion on the bridge. Years of traffic and salting the roads in the winter has sped up the deterioration. Because of this, it's undergone many repairs. 7 years ago, a replacement cost analysis said it would take $800 million to rebuild the bridge. To repair it would be $200 to $300 million more. The estimated cost of building the Alexandra Bridge the first time around is believed to have been close to $800,000. But then, a fire in 1946 damaged the Quebec side of the bridge, leading to major repairs and the removal of the electric tram lines. The bridge was designated a National Historic Civil Engineering Site in 1995, and then later recognized as a bridge of national historic importance in 2010. In 2019, the Government of Canada mandated Public Services and Procurement Canada to replace the bridge within 10 years. The pre-planning phase kicked off shortly after. What followed was a process of consultations, assessments, and formulating a design for the bridge. Now, in 2025, the Alexandra Bridge project is moving into its next phase, building a new bridge to be completed by 2032.
They're walking a fine line. They were saying, well, it's about to collapse, okay? And yet, their plan is, okay, we repair it, and then we use it for 3 years, full traffic and all, like if it was not in danger. So there's not an imminent danger at all, at least not what like they initially said.
While Claude is fighting to save the bridge from demolition, some say the option to keep the bridge and maintain it was never even on the table. Florence Lehman is the president of Bike Ottawa, an advocacy organization that is on the public advisory group for the Alexandra Bridge Replacement Project. She says minds were already made up.
Keeping the current bridge was never on the table. They had different options that they wanted to talk about, but keeping the bridge was never on the table.
She says that if they're going to build a new one, as planned, the project should be more ambitious.
It should be a very ambitious project, regardless of how much it would cost, because you're looking about something that will, last 100 years.
So what will the new bridge look like? The popular model is called Motion, and it's designed by a firm in London, England. The bridge design features a bike lane in between 2 lanes for vehicles and a pedestrian walkway. According to the National Capital Commission website, the design concept is meant to honor the efforts of Indigenous communities for the restoration of traditional habitat of the eel and their respected wisdom and dedication to reconciliation and reconnection to the land. The Alexandra Bridge Coalition has spearheaded a petition that currently has over 3,600 signatures. The English version has 631 names, while the French version has 3,155 names. The coalition has also said that the decision to completely demolish the bridge was made hastily and without comprehensive studies. Claude also believes that Canadian heritage would be lost if the Alexandra Bridge comes down.
Heritage is not just books or history in books, it's also monuments that are present and real, that help people, remind them what was done in the past, how their country came about, and therefore their identity as a citizen and of a country and a community. I mean, it's essential to have monuments that are, testimony to our history and show where we came from and where we're going.
In just 3 years' time, the Ottawa skyline could look dramatically different. According to Claude, without government intervention, groups fighting to save the bridge's over 125-year history will be facing an uphill battle. In Ottawa, I'm Tamara Merritt.
It seems like many of Ottawa's oldest landmarks are going through some changes.
I think so too. Like Ottawa's oldest mall, which was recently purchased by new owners that are potentially trying to redevelop the property. This change comes as many malls around Ottawa and across North America are either pivoting to new business models or shutting down. Carlingwood Mall, which opened in 1956, could just be one example of a new trend in urban planning and development.
This is Carlingwood Mall. It's the oldest mall in Ottawa, and it's currently going through some changes. A duo of property groups recently purchased the 30-acre property and are looking to potentially redevelop it. And it's not the only one. A number of malls across North America and even just Ottawa are currently being reimagined. I'm Reagan Spencer, and today on the 25th Hour, we'll be looking at where North America's malls have been, where they are now, and where they're going. Carlingwood Mall opened in 1956, making it Ottawa's oldest mall. A year before the mall opened, the Sears opened on the property. It was demolished in 2019. Now, Carlingwood Mall's owners are trying to make sure that it doesn't go the way of the dinosaurs, or in this case, the way of the Sears. Here at Carlingwood Mall, the visitors say that the old mall is still holding on.
When they had more here, it was a nice shopping place just to quietly be able to go, because other places can be very busy, and this one tends to be pleasant in the amount of people that go through it. It's not too overcrowded.
My 91-year-old mother and I, we come and we walk, and we always see people that we know, and if we don't see people that we know, then we meet people. It's a friendly kind of place.
In June of 2024, Anthem Property Group, which now owns Carlingwood Mall, estimated that the mall sees about 280,000 guests per month. With about 90 stores to offer, the mall is home to the largest Canadian Tire store in the country. While malls' popularity has waned in general with online shopping, that doesn't mean that they can't evolve and grow.
It's both, I think, a pro and a con when you think of that dual function of malls, right? So having malls contain things like libraries or not-for-profit organizations, which we see in some malls, right, can be a way to provide some spaces and some resources for that community building, but at the same time it might be seen as detracting from the commercial purpose of the mall.
That's Debbie Rudman, a professor in the School of Occupational Therapy at Western University and an expert on third spaces. A third space, according to Rudman, is a place outside of home or work that serves certain social functions in people's lives, like achieving a sense of belonging and connection to their community. Can a mall be a third space?
I think it can be, and I think that there definitely are examples of existing malls that kind of sit in that space of being obviously a commercial space. That's what malls exist for, and to survive, malls need people to come and purchase things. But malls also being a social or a community space. And if you look at the literature on malls, the development of malls in sort of these suburban areas was both for that commercial purpose, but people began to use them for social purposes.
The U.S. has more data on this issue than Canada does, and it's not looking great. According to Capital One Shopping Research, 87% of America's malls could be closed by 2032. That means that out of the 1,150 malls that exist, only 150 will remain open. That being said, Canada's situation is quite a bit different, and according to Carleton University professor Ian Lee, it's much more optimistic.
I'm not one of those people who say that in another 5 or 10 years there'll be no physical bricks and mortar left. I don't believe it. I believe the balance between e-commerce and bricks and mortar is changing. Right now, StatsCan data says it's about 12% of retail sales is electronic, digital, which means a staggering 88% of retail sales is still bricks and mortar in stores.
Carlingwood's developers are planning a phased approach for whatever comes next to keep stability for the neighborhood and the shoppers.
So the more diverse the experiences in that mall, the more it's going to pull in customers. So that's going to be the secret of success. So you're going to want everything in there, from restaurants to taverns to medical support services to not just clothing stores, anything that brings people in. Okay, and so I actually think Carlingwood is going to prosper. I really do.
Everything changes, but I think Carlingwood could probably keep itself and create a special identity for itself rather than what's the standard malls. But it depends on who bought it, right?
I would love to see innovative places like green stores and fashion stores and little bijou restaurants. And I like the fact that there are there is a real blend of medical, and you can buy your electric bikes right there and have your coffee right there. I like that blend as well.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see some more fashion stores to come in and more generalized services, and that type of thing would be nice.
Yeah.
While the future of Carlingwood Mall isn't certain, if it and other malls like it keep evolving with their communities, then it's safe to say that malls aren't dead after all. Reagan Spencer, 25th Hour.
Thanks so much for watching this episode. Our class worked really hard to put these documentaries together.
We'll be back with more 25th Hour in the fall. I'm Reagan Spencer.
And I'm Nadia Nikpour-Badr. We'll see you next time.